Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're gonna completely shatter your everyday experience of reality. We walk around every day feeling like time is this smooth, continuous stream, right? We just naturally assume our brains are basically biological computers processing the outside world. But what if that is fundamentally wrong? In this explainer, we're decoding the truly groundbreaking work of Edward Hillinar, psychologist and independent researcher. His resonance theory of consciousness, or RTC, argues that everything you think you know about how you experience a single second of reality is actually an incredibly sophisticated illusion. Okay, so let's take a quick look at our roadmap for today. We're going to move from a massive philosophical mystery right down to the exact millisecond by millisecond mechanics of your own mind. We'll hit the mystery of consciousness. Consciousness is a resonance process, the 62 millisecond reality, the bimodal brain-mind model, and finally wrap up with why this changes everything. Section 1. The mystery of consciousness and the hard problem. We have to begin with the very way you experience the world right now, which always feels like a smooth, unbroken stream. Seriously, have you ever noticed that you experience time as a continuous flow? Like when you listen to a piece of music or watch a bird fly across the sky, it doesn't look choppy. But what if I told you that this smooth stream is actually a biological trick being played by your brain? For decades, science has completely struggled with the hard problem of consciousness, basically trying to figure out how physical matter in your brain magically creates the rich, qualitative feeling of being alive. But according to the source material, this problem only really exists because we're starting with the wrong assumptions about time itself. The first major hurdle we face is what the research calls the homogeneous time fallacy. This is the totally incorrect assumption that our internal, subjective experience of time operates exactly like a mechanical clock. We naturally tend to think time is just this uniform, independent grid where events happen. But our lived experience, what philosophers call our phenomenal time, doesn't work like the ticking hands on a wall clock at all. The fallacy is confusing the tool we use to measure reality with reality itself. We assume a minute of deep focus and a minute of sheer panic are neurologically the same just because the clock says 60 seconds. But as we're going to see, your brain plays by entirely different temporal rules. Moving to Section 2, Consciousness and Resonance as a Vibrational Field. To actually solve this mystery, we must completely rethink what the brain is doing. So the absolutely crucial point here is that Edward Hillinar, psychologist and independent researcher, proposes we stop looking at the brain as a computer that somehow manufactures consciousness. Instead, his resonance theory of consciousness suggests we look at it as a complex tuning fork. RTC argues that consciousness isn't some magical byproduct that just pops out of firing neurons. Instead, consciousness is a fundamental resonance process. Imagine the universe as a vast, vibrating holographic field. In this model, your brain isn't generating the music, it's the instrument tuning into the frequencies. And this brings us to a mind-bending flip in perspective known as prima experienza. Instead of assuming that physical matter creates experience, RTC asserts that experience itself is the primary foundation of reality. The brain is what the author calls a resonant operator. It doesn't create consciousness in the dark. It modulates and tunes into a pre-existing vibrational field. Under this theory, matter and mind aren't two totally separate things where one magically creates the other. Rather, they co-emerge. They are literally two sides of the exact same resonant coin. Mind is the internal experience of the resonance, and matter is what that resonance looks like from the outside. Which brings us to Section 3, the 62 millisecond reality and frames of consciousness. If consciousness is indeed a resonance process, how does it physically structure the time we feel? 62. That's 62 milliseconds. According to the research, this is the baseline duration of a single frame of your conscious reality. Just think about that for a second. Your waking life is not a fluid river. It is a series of incredibly fast, 62 millisecond snapshots stitched together. This exact measurement is defined as the psychophysical time quantum, or PPTQ. Just like a movie reel looks like a continuous flow but is actually made up of discrete 24 frames per second images, your reality is broken down into these discrete chunks. The PPTQ is the minimal window of time required for your brain's neural networks to synchronize and integrate sensory information into one single coherent moment of awareness.
If an event happens faster than this quantum, your brain just bundles it together into one unit. So your smooth, continuous experience is essentially an illusion created by the rapid-fire sequencing of these discrete 62-millisecond blocks.
All right, Section 4, the bimodal brain-mind model and two modes of reality. Let's explore how we actually process those frames. Now that we know our reality is sliced into these 62-millisecond frames, how do we make sense of the world? The source material introduces a brilliant concept called the bimodal brain-mind model. It contrasts two different modes operating in your brain simultaneously. On one side, you have mind experience, or me. This is the raw, pre-reflective, continuous feeling resonant wave of simply being alive. But you can't function just on raw feeling, right? You need to recognize threats, objects, and concepts. That is exactly where mind perception, or MP, comes in. MP takes that raw wave and turns it into coarse-grained, discrete, categorized objects and representations. So me is the feeling of the wave, and MP is the act of naming it. It's really fascinating to see how this double discretization actually works in practice. The continuous-looking waveforms of your mind experience get actively organized and chopped down into those discrete blocks of mind perception we just talked about. Your brain is essentially taking an incredibly complex, vibrating reality and constantly compressing it into neat, usable little boxes of perception, frame by 62-millisecond frame. Finally, Section 5, why this matters for mental health and time. Let's see how all this builds into a really profound understanding of your everyday awareness. This fascinating data directly from the source shows us that your mental state literally alters your frame rate. Remember that baseline 62 milliseconds? Well, it turns out it's completely flexible. When you are in a state of high stress or arousal, your brain actually speeds up the frame rate, shrinking your reality to a highly fragmented 14-millisecond PPTQ. You get incredibly precise, hypervigilant details, but everything feels kind of disconnected and chaotic. On the flip side, in deep meditation, your frame rate slows way down, expanding a single moment of consciousness to around 105 milliseconds. Because more information is integrated into a single frame, the experience becomes deeply unified, and the boundaries of the ego actually begin to dissolve. So what you should really take away from this is that your daily stresses, your anxieties, and your meditative joys aren't just all in your head in some vague, abstract psychological way. They are physical, measurable shifts in your brain's quantum resonance structure. According to the framework of this theory, psychological suffering is quite literally a disruption in your resonant frame rate. Conditions like severe anxiety or depression happen when your internal tuning fork loses its phase synchronization. Therefore, healing isn't just about changing your thoughts, it is fundamentally about restoring your brain's natural, rhythmic synchronization to the world. We've seen today how our continuous experience is actually built from discrete, vibrating blocks of time. Our brains are not factories producing consciousness, but instruments tuning into it, adjusting their frame rate depending on our level of stress or peace. I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought to ponder as you step back into the illusion of time's continuous flow. If your very reality is being dismantled and rebuilt from scratch every 62 milliseconds, who is the persistent you doing the experiencing? Thank you so much for watching this explainer, and keep questioning the flow.